Warning, the following video contains major spoilers for the movie Bird Box. If you have not yet and still want to see the movie Bird Box, go watch that and then come back. Otherwise, you've been warned. 2018 is over, and it's about time. But looking back, when you think film in 2018, what do you think of? You probably think of Avengers Infinity War, Black Panther, some of the big films. What about horror films in 2018? Well, you probably think of A Quiet Place, or Hereditary, or the Halloween sequel, remake, reboot thingy. What about Netflix horror movies? Well, you probably think of Cam, that was pretty great, I don't know. What about movies starring Sandra Bullock and Sarah Paulson? Maybe Ocean's 8. The point is, I'm currently trying to wrap my head around the fact that the film I've seen no one talk about more this year than any other film is a film that came out on December the 21st, 10 days before the end of the year, and that film is called Bird Box. Seriously, the world is going absolutely insane over this film. It's all over Twitter, and it has a bunch of memes, and it even spawned its own online challenge.
And these women traverse an escalator also while blindfolded.
So yeah, it's fair to say that Bird Box is doing great this year. I mean, Netflix released their numbers recently, and oh wow.
Took off my blindfold this morning to discover that 45 million Netflix accounts have already watched Bird Box.
I have one issue with this though, and that is, it isn't a very good film. That's not to call the film incompetent though. It's fairly well shot for the most part, outside of a couple of annoying shots. The locations are great. Sandra Bullock gives an absolutely phenomenal performance. Most of the acting overall is pretty good. There is some good dialogue between some of the characters. The visual effects were actually really cool, and even if you don't see the monsters, the way they have the wind moving and rustling the leaves as a sign that they're there was actually pretty damn cool. I can't say I was ever bored by this film either. I really like the concept of this film, and the ending's fine. I mean, there is some cheesiness to the way the film ends, but overall, the ending was fine enough, I guess. And, oh wait, the protagonist was good, but that kind of brings us into the next thing I have to say about this film. The character writing is absolutely horrendous in this movie. You have a film about a big ensemble of characters all cooped up in one location, and I don't care about the majority of them. I care about Sandra Bullock's protagonist, Mallory, but that's because she's a protagonist and gets easily the most development out of all the characters on show. I really like Sarah Paulson's character in this movie, and her performance is great as per usual, but she's only in it for like 5 minutes before. John Malkovich's character is fine. He has some really annoying moments. He has one really great scene with Sandra Bullock where they're just chatting while drinking alcohol. He's fine, but he's not all that interesting. Jackie Weaver's character is completely unnecessary and boring. Then she has one moment where she does something significant, and then insta-dies in the next scene. The character I take some of the biggest issue with is Charlie because of how underdeveloped he is. He exists for exposition early on by just quoting a bunch of religions, gets no development whatsoever in the entire movie, and exists to get the characters into the store so they can have some plot conveniences and they can have a spooky scene, and then he sacrifices himself. And we're very obviously meant to care about this. But he has zero development whatsoever in the entire film. They tell us he's writing a book, and that's literally it. I just can't care about his character because the film gives me nothing to latch onto. So when he sacrifices himself, it doesn't matter whatsoever. Maybe if Jess had done the sacrifice instead, there would actually be some weight because she's had some development whatsoever. Sure, they need to have a scene where you establish what's going on with a character earlier on, but maybe you could have kept Sarah Paulson's character alive a little longer so you could actually have some effect in the scene instead of just killing a rando. Olympia's fine. Tom is fine. Gary is completely unbearable, largely due to Tom Hollander's awful performance, but also because he's an underwritten psycho cliche. The characters I take the most issue with are Felix and Lucy. They have legitimate chemistry, they're interesting characters, you want to see what happens to them. They actually symbolize people coming together in a bad time, as one of them seems like a dealer, criminal, and the other is a police trainee. The contrast yet connection with these characters is incredibly intriguing, and I was really interested in seeing exactly what happened to these characters.
Close the garage. Got it. Wait. Close your eyes. Yeah.
Okay, it's close.
Sons of bitches. Where's the goddamn car?
Are you kidding me? This is one of the biggest cop-out endings to a character arc I've ever seen. These characters have potential, just utilize them. The characters in this movie are overall just annoying and not fun to watch, with a couple of exceptions. And if I haven't named any characters, it's because I just don't care. Even if I did care, the way the film tells its story just makes it impossible to care about a single character that isn't the protagonist. Half of this movie is random intercuts of the river timeline, and half the movie is random intercuts of the house timeline. And sure, they eventually do meet up towards the end, but it just makes the movie kind of messy in that aspect. Especially considering in the very opening scene you have Sandra Bullock and the two kids and no one else, and you instantly know everybody is going to die. This isn't helped by the fact that some of the deaths are foreshadowed so horrendously, particularly Olympia's. Wow, a scene where the main character is told by another character that if anything happens to them, they should take care of their child. Wow, I wonder if anything is going to happen to this character. Wow, never would have guessed. It also doesn't help that we know from the get-go that she's only having one kid, but we see in the opening scene that she has two. Maybe just have one surprising new story, please? And speaking of, the story isn't very good. The story for this movie can be summed up in a couple of sentences, but it's a 2-hour movie because of how much padding there is. People start killing themselves. People get holed up in house. Slowly die one by one. Incident gets them out of house. Only Sandra Bullock and two kids are left after a while. They go down river. They run from monsters for a long time. They get to a place that they need to go. The end. This could have been a TV episode, for God's sake. And as I already mentioned, the timelines in this film are intercut in a way. If you want this to be a movie, just have the opening bit where you show what's going on with the tragedy, don't have any of the ensemble part with the house, and go straight to the river and just have it that she had twins in the beginning. And yeah, the house part's probably in the book that I didn't read, but a film should be able to stand on its own without relying on a book. Most of the plot of this movie just consists of random character conflicts, plus some cliches, plus some spooky scenes. And as I already mentioned, the characters are terrible. It also doesn't help that nothing makes any goddamn sense. I'm allowing a lot of suspension of disbelief with a concept like this, but god damn it, nothing in this movie makes any sense. This film doesn't want you to think. Why can't the monsters get inside the houses? Is it really that difficult? Sandra Bullock's on a supply run later on in the film and she starts hearing crazies near her. Why the hell would you start taking the children on supply runs with you? Just continue doing them solo so there's less chance of a casualty, considering on the very next supply run, one character dies. How does the whole suicide thing even work when Olympia and Tom were able to do things before they killed themselves, whereas every other character just killed themselves straight away? None of this makes any sense. This film isn't consistent. How are the birds Mallory finds in the store even alive? They would have starved to death. How do the birds survive the last boat crash? The movie introduces this really stupid conflict where one of the characters is like, oh, we should just stay in the grocery store, and all the other characters are like, no, we need to go back because there's people in the house. But why doesn't one of you just drive back and pick them up and bring them all to the grocery store? You would all be fine, and it completely eliminates the concept later of Felix and Lucy taking the car. Why is every character in this movie so dumb? I mean, apparently every building in this entire movie is impossible for a monster to get into, so I mean, it must be safe. Isn't staying in the store also a benefit considering there are 2 pregnant women? You'd have all the supplies you could need. Also, it would be significantly harder for Olympia to let Gary in, so there would be a significant amount less deaths. This is so simple. Why did none of the characters think of this? Also, while we're talking about the store, let's go back to Charlie's self-sacrifice for a second. Why doesn't he just take John Malkovich's character's gun instead and just shoot fish fingers there and then? I mean, sure, they were struggling to keep him out, but it wasn't going to be, oh, this is going to kill us all within the next 2 seconds unless someone kills himself for us. You could have gotten the gun and solved the whole problem. Why is every character in this movie an idiot? You don't even need to go over it, just get him to pass you the gun. Characters in this movie just take stupid risks so the plot can progress and so you can have random scary scenes. And yes, you can attribute that to plenty of films as well, like some I love. I know some people took that issue with A Quiet Place, I personally didn't, but you can put it there if you want to. But in this film, it is so much more annoying. And also, while we're on the topic, here's our next topic. It isn't scary! Now, admittedly, I've seen a lot of horror movies in my life, so I am kind of desensitized to a lot of the obvious cliches, but it's still possible to scare me. But Bird Box just isn't scary or tense or original or inventive whatsoever. The scares in this movie don't work not just because you don't care about the characters, but because you have seen them so many times before. And for most of the scary scenes, you're too distracted wondering why the characters are so stupid to even be scared. And some of the tense scenes in this movie are just plain laughable.
Hey, asshole!
Hey! What are you doing here? Have you come to see?
This is meant to be tense and frightening, by the way. Apparently you're not meant to be laughing during this entire scene. And then we have the deaths in this movie. I've already discussed my issues with Charlie's death. Jez's death is fine until you consider that the car crash did nothing, so why didn't she just get out of her car and just walk in front of the van? I mean, I get it, we need to have our protagonist injured in a tragic accident so we can feel bad for them, yeah. But it would have been just more practical for her to kill herself in another way. I've already discussed Olympia and Tom's deaths, and quite frankly, when it comes to most of the cast, the deaths don't have any effect because you don't care about the characters. In a lot of cases, they're just there. The deaths aren't all that interesting, for the most part. There's just a few standout laughable ones. This one in the hospital just really makes me laugh because of the way the woman looks at Sandra Bullock after she's attempted to kill herself. For some reason, I guess. Hey, that's not unintentionally hilarious at all. I also really love the extras in this scene. That's weird. If only I'd brought a camera. Also, none of you are gonna check if this distressed pregnant woman running away is okay? Really? And then we have Greg's death, which is just...
What's going on?
Greg, can we come in?
I'm sorry, what method of suicide involves flipping a table exactly? Yeah, remember when I made that comment about the visual effects in this movie being cool? That was only about the monsters. The rest of the CGI in this movie is actually pretty bad. Time to cry over someone I've only known for like 3 hours.
Fucking told them it was a mistake.
Why does the dialogue in this movie remind me so much of Truth or Dare? Back to the point. The reason Bird Box isn't scary is because you're often distracted by how stupid it is, and whenever you're not, you can't take it seriously. The film's tone is just overall messy, and it just kind of ruins the scare factor completely and utterly. Something that's very important to every film is the themes. And this film's main theme is motherhood. For a start, we have the representation through the image that she paints that shows a bunch of people all together, but they all look sad. It's an obvious representation of the house story.
What do you think? I think I see
see a whole bunch of people sitting together, but they all feel incredibly lonely.
Well, the loneliness is just incidental. It's really about people's inability to connect.
The disconnect ultimately culminates in Mallory having a favorite child, as her daughter is actually Olympia's and not hers. And throughout the film, she has to learn to love her child. Except for the fact that she doesn't really learn anything. It's just at one point she just decides, you know what, I like you now. It doesn't actually feel earned at all. Considering very early on in the movie, it's very clear that Mallory is happy to let the girl die, but then later on she just has flashbacks to Olympia, and then it's just like, you know what, let's just risk every life instead.
Nobody's looking. Okay, nobody's looking.
Anyways, later on they all get separated, and then she finds Boy and starts calling on Girl, but Girl doesn't come. And Boy tells her, oh, she's scared of you. And we get easily the funniest scene in the whole movie.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, sweet girl. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so hard. I shouldn't have stopped you from playing. I shouldn't have ended Tom's story because it wasn't finished. When he climbed to the very top of that giant oak tree, he saw the most beautiful things. He saw hundreds of children play games. Hundreds. And he saw birds, all different colored birds. And he saw us. He saw us from the very top. He saw us together, and we have to be together. And it's not just a story. It's not. Because I have so much I want to show you. I have so much I want you to see. Okay? But we have to do it together, okay? So I just need you to come to me right now, okay? Please. Just come to me. Baby, come to me, okay? Oh.
There's a lot of reasons this scene doesn't work in my opinion. And not just a case of, oh, the music's bad or anything, although the music is bad. No, the writing here is just not good in my opinion. Yes, tell her about all the beautiful things in the world that you want her to see. She definitely won't open her eyes, that's a great idea. I understand you want her to come to you and apologizing to her and making her less scared of you is probably a good idea. But the way the writers went about trying to portray this just does not work in my opinion. And again, this is just my opinion. I am aware that plenty of people have cried at this scene, but honestly the bad writing just kills it for me, even if Sandra Bullock is trying her hardest here. Anyways, then we reach the end of the film and Sandra Bullock and her kids are hanging out with a bunch of blind people. Anyways, they run into the doctor that was actually helping Sandra Bullock throughout the start of the film, who knew full well Sandra Bullock did not want kids. In fact, the opening of the film tries to make it as abundantly clear as possible that Sandra Bullock does not want to be a mother.
It's different with the baby. It's an immediate love affair.
It's not gonna be that way for me.
Yes, it will.
Oh, man.
But now her character has progressed and it's time for Dr. Lapham to see that Mallory really loves her children, as now she is going to finally name them. She names the boy Tom, so I won't show a clip because he's a much less significant character, but in the scene where she names her girl, she shows a lot of emotion as she discusses the sweetest girl she ever met, who she only showed love for throughout the entire movie.
Your name is Olympia. Yeah. Named after the sweetest girl I ever met.
Shut up, Olympia!
In conclusion, I don't think it's exactly unclear that I don't like this film. Quite honestly, there's a lot of stuff I didn't even go into, like how bad the audio mixing is.
Where's the goddamn car?
You guys, where are Lucy and Felix?
Or just how bad John Malkovich's performance is.
No, the only thing that will happen soon is we're all gonna die soon. This has a classic biowarfare signature.
And many other things I just didn't discuss. But overall, I think this movie's really bad. Quite honestly, when I first watched it, I gave it a score and I thought, okay, maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I should give this a point higher. But quite honestly, editing through this, I'm wondering if I scored this movie too highly. This film is a lot worse than I remember, and through everything I am noticing things I didn't even notice the first time around, like how bad Jackie Weaver is in her death scene when it comes to performance.
No! Oh no! Oh please no! Oh no! 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 No!
Would I recommend this movie? No. It's not all that entertaining, to be honest. It's just bad and uninteresting for a lot of it. I mean, it's watchable, but it's still bad. Plus, there are plenty of better Netflix horror movies out there. Like Cam. Go watch Cam. Cam's incredible. Cam's great. I love Cam. It's a great movie. Go watch that. Don't watch this. It's not worth your time. It's not as good as everyone's claiming it is. It just isn't good. And what would I give Bird Box out of 10? Well, at first I was considering a 3 or a 4, and now I'm not sure if I should give it a 2 or a 3, but the common score is a 3 out of 10, so I'll go with that. That's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed. Like, share, subscribe. I'm bad at outros. I'm just gonna let this play out. Okay, goodbye.